Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga episode. This is a gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode, and it is the first in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide series. I'll be just reading through the entire Dungeon Master's Guide, and if you want to join me, I welcome you. Of course, you can join in live in the chat and let me know your thoughts and about any rules or ideas or Dungeons & Dragons or Dragonlance in general. And we can have a good conversation back and forth. Again, this is just, it's for fun. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be a little bit of fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss it with you. So that's what I'm planning on doing here. I'd like to take a moment and thank my collaborator patrons, the Heroes of the Lands, and invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel by visiting the links in the description below. And you can even pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link, and that all goes to help me continue producing Dragonlance specific content. Because let's be honest, there's a deficit of it. So I'm going to have fun doing it. I hope you'll join me. All right, let's dive into this. And what I want to do first is show you this title page because it's brilliant. You've got the Scotland's national animal, the unicorn here. And that's something I didn't believe. Like, my son actually told me that. We were at the Highland Games, and he's like, yeah, you should get a unicorn tattoo, because I got a bunch of tattoos. I was like, why the hell would I want a unicorn tattoo? He's like, it's Scotland's national animal. I was like, no, it's not. There's no way that's true. It's true. It's absolutely true. All right, so we have the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Special Reference Work Dungeon Master's Guide, a compiled volume of information primarily used by Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game referees, including combat tables, monster lists and encounters, treasure and magic tables and descriptions, random dungeon generation, random wilderness terrain generation, suggestions on game mastering, and more by Gary Gygax. Illustrations by David C. Sutherland III, D.A. Trampier, Darlene Pecule, Will McLean, David S. LaForce, Errol Otis, cover by David C. Sutherland III. All right, let's dive in with the foreword. Oh, you know what I like to do is mark down timestamps, so let's do that. Forward. Is dungeon mastering an art or a science? An interesting question. If you consider the pure creative aspect of starting from scratch, the personal touch of individual flair that goes into preparing and running a unique campaign, or the particular style of moderating a game adventure, then dungeon mastering may indeed be thought of as an art. If you consider the aspect of experimentation, the painstaking effort of preparation and attention to detail, and the continuing search for new ideas and approaches, then dungeon mastering is perhaps more like a science, not always exacting in a literal sense, but exacting in terms of what is required to do the job well. Esoteric questions aside, one thing is for certain. Dungeon mastering is, above all, a labor of love. It is demanding, time-consuming, and certainly not a task to be undertaken lightly. The sheer bulk of the book you hold in your hand will tell you that. But, as all DMs know, the rewards are great. An endless challenge to the imagination and intellect, an enjoyable pastime to fill many hours with fantastic and often unpredictable happenings, and an opportunity to watch a story unfold and a grand idea to grow and flourish. The imagination knows no bounds, and the possibilities of the game of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons are just as limitless. Who can say what awaits each player, except a cornucopia of fantasy and heroic adventure? So much is waiting indeed. This book holds much in store for you as a DM. It is your primary tool in constructing your own world or milieu. It contains a wealth of material, and combined with the other works of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the Monster Manual and Player's Handbook, gives you all the information you need to play AD&D. But, as always, one more thing is needed: your imagination. Use the written material as your foundation and inspiration. Then, explore the creative possibilities you have in your own mind to make your game something special. Dungeon mastering itself is no easy undertaking, to be sure, but dungeon mastering well is doubly difficult. There are few game masters around who are so superb in their conduct of play that they can disdain the opportunity to improve themselves in some way. Fortunately, this work addresses the matter at length and gives you plenty of suggestions on all aspects of dungeon mastering, as well as some of the finer points, in order to help you improve your own efforts. Take heed, and always endeavor to make the game the best it can be, and all that it can be. Mike Carr, TSR Games and Rules Editor, 16 May, 1979. All right. Preface. What follows herein is strictly for the eyes of you, the campaign referee. As the creator and ultimate authority in your respective game, this work is written as one dungeon master equal to another. Pronouncements there may be, but they are not from on high as respects your game. Dictums are given for the sake of the game only, for if Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is to survive and grow, it must have some degree of uniformity, a familiarity of method and procedure from campaign to campaign within the whole. Advanced D&D is more than a framework around which individual DMs construct their respective milieux. It is, above all, a set of boundaries for all of the worlds devised by referees everywhere. These boundaries are broad and spacious, and there are numerous areas where they are so vague and amorphous as to make them nearly non-existent, but they are there nonetheless. When you build your campaign, you will tailor it to suit your personal tastes. In the heat of play, it will slowly evolve into a compound of your personality and those of your better participants, a superior alloy. And as long as your campaign remains viable, it will continue to slow process of change and growth. In this lies a great danger, however. The systems and parameters contained in the whole of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons are based on a great deal of knowledge, experience gained through discussion, play, testing, questioning, and, hopefully, personal insight. Limitations, checks and balances, and all the rest are placed into the system in order to assure that what is based thereon will be a superior campaign, a campaign which offers the most interesting play possibilities to the greatest number of participants for the longest period of time possible. You, as referee, will have to devote countless hours of real effort in order to produce just a fledgling campaign, viz., a background for the whole, some small village or town, and a reasoned series of dungeon levels, a lot of which will be suitable for elaboration and expansion on a periodic basis. To obtain real satisfaction from such effort, you must have participants who will make use of your creations, play to learn the wonders and face the perils you have devised for them. If it is all too plain and too easy, the players will quickly lose interest and your effort will prove to have been in vain. Likewise, if the campaign is too difficult, players will quickly become discouraged and lose interest in a game where they are always the butt. Again, your labors have been for naught. These facts are of prime importance, for they underlie many rules. Naturally, everything possible cannot be included in the whole of this work. As a participant of the game, I would not care to have anyone telling me exactly what must go into a campaign and how it must be handled. If so, why not play some game like chess? As the author, I always realize that there are limits to my creativity and imagination. Others will think of things I didn't and devise things beyond my capability. As an active dungeon master, I kept a careful watch of things which would tend to complicate matters without improving them, systems devised seemingly to make the game drag for hours, rules which lessened the fantastic and unexpected in favor of the mundane and ordinary. As if that were not enough hats to wear, I also wore that of a publisher, watching the work so as to make sure that it did not grow so large as to become unmanageable cost-wise. None of this was compromise per se, but the process was most certainly a refining of what should logically be presented in the system. Returning again to the framework aspect of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, which is aimed at at a universe into which similar campaigns and parallel worlds can be placed. With certain uniformity of systems and laws, players will be able to move from one campaign to another and know at least the elemental principles which govern the new milieu, for as milieux will have certain, but not necessarily the same, laws in common. Character races and classes will be nearly the same. Character ability scores will have the identical meaning, or nearly so. Magic spells will function in a certain manner regardless of which world the player is functioning in. Magic devices will certainly vary, but their principles will be similar. This uniformity will help not only players, it will enable DMs to carry on a meaningful dialogue and exchange of useful information. It may also eventually lead to grand tournaments, wherein persons from any part of the US, or the world for that matter, can compete for accolades. The danger of a mutable system is that you or your players will go too far in some undesirable direction and end up with a short-lived campaign. Participants will always be pushing for a game which allows them to become strong and powerful far too quickly. Each will attempt to take the game out of your hands and mold it to his or her own ends. To satisfy this natural desire is to issue a death warrant to a campaign, for it will either be a one-player affair where the players will desert en masse for something more challenging and equitable. Similarly, you must avoid the tendency to drift into areas foreign to the game as a whole. Such campaigns become so strange as to be no longer AD&D. They are isolated and will usually wither. Variation and difference are desirable, but both should be kept within the boundaries of the overall system. Imaginative and creative addition can most certainly be included. That is why nebulous areas have been built into the game. Keep such individuality in perspective by developing a unique and detailed world based on the rules of advanced D&D. No two campaigns will ever be the same, but all will have the common ground necessary to maintain the whole as a viable entity, about which you and your players can communicate with the many thousands of others who also find swords and sorcery role-playing gaming an amusing and enjoyable pastime. As this book is the exclusive precinct of the DM, you must view any non-DM player possessing it as something less than worthy of honorable death. Peeping players there will undoubtedly be, but they are simply lessening their own enjoyment of the game by taking away some of the sense of wonder that otherwise arises from a game which has rules hidden from participants. It is in your interests, and in theirs, to discourage possession of this book by players. If any of your participants do read herein, it is suggested that you assess them as heavy fee for consulting sages and other sources of information not normally attainable by the inhabitants of your milieu. If they express knowledge which could only be garnered by consulting these pages, a magic item or two can be taken as payment. Insufficient, but perhaps it will tend to discourage such actions. I sincerely hope that you find this new system to your taste and enjoy it. The material is herein, but only you can construct the masterpiece from it. Your personal campaign will bring hundreds of hours of fun and excitement to many eager players. Masterful dungeoning to you. All right, in the next section here. Credits. I don't know why I hyphenated that. Credits and acknowledgments. The following is an alphabetical list of all those persons who in some way contributed to the formation of this work. Naturally, each did not make an identical contribution, and those with whom I normally play AD&D, as well as those kind enough to review the initial manuscript, have more influence and engendered more ideas than did those others with whom I did not have the privilege of continuing close association or contact. Nonetheless, all are herewith credited and thanked, trusting that each will know what his or her own contribution was. Dave Arneson, Peter Arneson, Aronson, Brian Bloom, Mike Carr, Sean Cleary, Jean-Louis Fiasson, Ernie, the well-known barbarian Gygax, Luke Gygax, Al Hammock, Neil Healy, Tom Holsinger, Harold Johnson, Timothy Jones, Tim Kask, Rick Krebs, Len Lakofka, Jeff Leeson, Steve Marsh, Shar Niebling, Will Niebling, John Pickens, Gregory Reen, John Sapienza, Lawrence Schick, Doug Schwigman, Dennis Sester, Jack Vance, James M. Ward, Gene Wells, and Skip Williams. Also to be thanked are all those unaccounted DMs and players who have been eager to improve adventuring gaming and have spent their valuable time to give me the benefit of their thinking by letter or through personal contact at conventions. Your efforts to find ways to do things better, to point out ambiguities or flaws, and general desire to aid and encourage me are appreciated. Bob Bledsoe of Judges Guild must also be given credit. He and his associates have certainly contributed to the overall improvement of fantasy adventure gaming, making the undertaking easier and encouraging still more interest in role-playing. Finally, no list of credits would be complete unless I especially thank the artists who had been so much help with the entire compilation of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. These artists are Dave Sutherland and Dave Trampier. Thank you, gentlemen. If by any chance I've neglected anyone, please forgive me, as the task of finishing the Dungeon Master's Guide has taken some 2 years, and during that time I have read hundreds of pages of suggestions, done thousands of pages of researching, and written about 1,200 pages of manuscript, a job begun in 1976, often interrupted, has at last been completed. Notes many months or years ago have a way of getting lost in the last-minute rush at the finish. Gary Gygax. You know what I love about this? Is like some of those names that I read as thanks, they were involved in everything TSR, early on, especially Dragonlance. Just looking back at Harold Johnson was huge with Dragonlance. All right, introduction. The format of this book is simple and straightforward. The first sections pertain to material contained in the player's handbook, and each pertinent section is in corresponding order. Much information was purposely omitted from the latter work, as it is data which would not normally be known, at least initially, to a person of the nature which this game presupposes, i.e. an adventure in the world of swords and sorcery. It is incumbent upon all DMs to be thoroughly conversant with the player's handbook. And at the same time, you must also know that additional information which is given in this volume, for it rounds out and completes the whole, while players will know that they must decide upon an alignment, for example, you, the DM, will further know that each and every action they take will be mentally recorded by you. And at adventure's end, you will secretly note any player character movement on the alignment graph. I want to do a quick aside here. I always thought that was a Dragonlance thing. I had no idea, because, this is the first time I'm reading this from cover to cover, even though I played the game for years. I'd never made the mental connection that the DM tracking player alignment was something that was just normally happening. I thought that was like a confining, it was a sort of boundary within a character could, make choices and act. I never thought of it as an evolving trait based on the character's actions, as a player. I don't know, did you guys? After the material which pertains directly to the player's handbook comes the information which supplants and augments. There is a large section which lists and explains the numerous magical items. There are sections on the development of the campaign milieu, dungeon design, random creation of wilderness and dungeon levels, and the development of non-player characters. In fact, what I have attempted is to cram everything vital to the game into this book, so that you will be as completely equipped as possible to face the ravenous packs of players lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce upon the unwary referee and devour him or her at the first opportunity. Thus, besides the systems, I have made every effort to give the reasoning and justification for the game. Of course, the ultimate reason and justification is a playable and interesting game, and how much rationalization could actually go into a fantasy game. There is some at least, as you will see, for if the game is fantasy, there is a basis of much of what is contained herein, even though it be firmly grounded in worlds of make-believe. And while there are no optionals for the major rule systems of advanced D&D for uniformity of rules and procedures from game to game, campaign to campaign is stressed, there are plenty of areas where your own creativity and imagination are not bounded by the parameters of the game's system. These are sections where only a few hints and suggestions are given and the rest left to the DM. There is so much that could have been included herein that a major part of authoring this volume was deciding what would be omitted. The criterion was usefulness. First came material which was absolutely vital to play, then came the inclusion of what would be most helpful to you, and finally, interesting items of broad appeal which tend to improve the flavor of a campaign were sifted into the work. Material included was written with an eye towards playability and expedition. The fun of the game is action and drama. The challenge of problem solving is secondary. Long and drawn-out operations by the referee irritate the players. More realistic combat systems could certainly have been included here, but they have no real part in a game for a group of players having an exciting adventure. If you will do your best to keep the excitement level of your games at a peak, you will be doing yourself and your participants a favor, which will be evident when players keep coming back for more. The final word, then, is the game. Read how and why the system is as it is, follow the parameters, and then cut portions as needed to maintain excitement. For example, the rules call for wandering monsters, but these can be not only irritating, if not deadly, but the appearance of such can actually spoil a game by interfering with an orderly expedition. You've set up an area full of clever tricks and traps, populated it with well-thought-out creatures, complexes, given clues about it to pique players' interest, and then the group has worked hard to supply themselves with everything by way of information and equipment they will need to face and overcome the imagined perils. They're gathering together and eager to spend an enjoyable evening playing their favorite game, with the expectation of going to a new, strange area and doing their best to triumph. They are willing to accept the hazards of the dice, be it loss of items, wounding, insanity, disease, death, as long as the process is exciting. But lo, every time you throw a monster die, a wandering nasty is indicated, and the party's strength is spent trying to fight their way into the area. Spells expended, battered and wounded, the characters trek back to their base. Expectations have been dashed, and probably interest too, by random chance. Rather than spoil such an otherwise enjoyable time, omit the wandering monsters indicated by the die. No, don't allow the party to kill them easily or escape unnaturally, for that goes contrary to the major precepts of the game. Wandering monsters, however, are included for two reasons, as is explained in the section about them. If a party deserves to have their beasties inflicted upon them, that is another matter. But in the example above, it is assumed that they are doing everything possible to travel quickly and quietly to their planned destination. If your work as a DM has been sufficient, the players will have all they can handle upon arrival, so let them get there. Give them a chance. The game is the thing, and certain rules can be distorted or disregarded altogether in favor of play. Know the game's systems, and you will know how and when to take upon yourself the ultimate power. To become the final arbiter rather than the interpreter of the rules can be all difficult and demanding task, and it cannot be undertaken lightly. For your players expect to play this game, not one made up on the spot. By the same token, they are playing the game the way you, their DM, imagines and creates it. Remembering that the game is greater than its parts, and knowing all of the parts, you will have overcome the greater part of the challenge of being a referee. Being a true DM requires cleverness and imagination, which no set of rule books can bestow. Seeing that you were clever enough to buy this volume, and you have enough imagination to desire to become the maker of a fantasy world, you are almost there already. Read and become familiar with the contents of this work and the one written for players. Learn your monsters and spice things up with some pantheons of super powerful beings. Then put your judging and refereeing ability into the creation of your own personal milieu, and you have donned the mantle of Dungeon Master. Welcome to the exultant ranks of the overworked and harassed, whose cleverness and imagination are all too often unappreciated by cloddish characters whose only thought of life is to loot, pillage, slay, and who fail to appreciate the hours of preparation which went into creating the creation of what they aim to destroy as cheaply and quickly as possible. As a DM, you must live by the immortal words of the sage who said, "Never give a sucker an even break." Also, don't be a sucker for your players, and you'd better be sure they follow sage advice too. As the DM, you have to prove in every game that you are still the best. This book is dedicated to helping to assure that you are. That's great. All right, that is the end of that section. Yeah, I've always played the game where fun trumps rule systems. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to break rules, but, from time to time, I may fudge a die roll on the sake of fun. Not often, but enough that I feel guilty about it. I don't know. Do you guys do that too? As the DM, as players, I make sure that they don't. You know what I mean? I did have a player who always hid his dice rolls all the time. And even when I was a player with him, trying to look over to see what he actually rolled, it was never what he said in the end. Players like that are going to exist, unfortunately. So you're just going to have to, either eject them from the group, try to get them to break that bad habit, or just deal with it. Again, fun is the point. All right. The game. Approaches to playing advanced Dungeons & Dragons. A few brief words are necessary to ensure that the reader has actually obtained a game form which he or she desires. Of the two approaches to hobby games today, one is best defined as the realism simulation school, and the other as the game school. AD&D is assuredly an adherent of the latter school. It does not stress any realism, in the author's opinion an absurd effort at best considering the topic. It does little to attempt to simulate anything either. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is first and foremost a game for the fun and enjoyment of those who seek to use imagination and creativity. This is not to say that where it does not interfere with the flow of the game, that the highest degree of realism hasn't been attempted, but neither is a serious approach to play discouraged. In all cases, however, the reader should understand that AD&D is designed to be an amusing and diverting pastime, something which can fill a few hours or consume endless days as the participants desire, but in no case something to be taken too seriously. For fun, excitement, and captivating fantasy, AD&D is unsurpassed. As a realistic simulation of things from the realm of make-believe, or even as a reflection of medieval or ancient warfare of culture or society, it can be deemed only a dismal failure. Readers who seek the latter must search elsewhere. Those who desire to create and populate imaginary worlds with larger-than-life heroes and villains, who seek relaxation with a fascinating game, and who generally believe games should be fun, not work, will hopefully find this system to their taste. That's awesome. All right, so let's show you this little illustration here on the dice. And this is just every illustration I come across and every table I'm going to show you. But there's something magical as a young man first learning this game about the dice themselves, Which dice apply to which rules? How many dice do I have to roll? It's just a lot of fun. All right, dice. As the DM, the tools of your trade are dice. Platonic, solid-shaped, or just about any other sort. The random numbers you generate by rolling dice determine the results based on the probabilities determined herein or those you have set forth on your own. In case you're not familiar with probability curves, there are two types which are determined by your dice. Linear, straight line, which has equal probability of any given integer in a number group, and bell, ascending and descending line, which has greater probability towards the center of the group of numbers than at either end. The two curves are illustrated thus. All right, let's show you this. Linear curve. Die probability of number appearing in ascending order. Linear probability developing a straight line of ascending probability when used as a cumulative probability as shown above. So this is interval between integers, 10%. Bell distribution, when used to delineate the probability of certain numbers appearing, develops a curved line like this. So I'm going to try to get it high enough so you can see it here. Probability of a given integer appearing percentage, going up the side here. All right, A single die or multiple dice read in succession, such as 3 dice read as hundreds, tens, and decimals, give linear probabilities. 2 or more dice added together generate a bell-shaped probability curve. Before any further discussion takes place, let us define the accepted abbreviations for the various dice. A die is symbolized by D, and its number of sides is shown immediately thereafter. A 6-sided die is therefore D6. D8 is an 8-sided die, and so on. 2 4-sided dice are expressed by 2d4. 5 8-sided dice are 5d8, etc. Any additions to or subtractions from the die or dice are expressed after the identification. Thus, d8 plus 8 means a linear number grouping between 9 and 16, while 3d6 minus 2 means a bell-shaped progression from 1 to 16, with the greatest probability group in the middle, 8 or 9. This latter progression has the same median numbers as 2d6, but it has higher and lower ends at a greater probability of a median number than if 2d12 were used. When percentage dice are to be used, this is indicated by d%. The d4 can be used to generate 25% incremental probabilities. Random numbers from 1 to 4 with plus 1, it generates a linear 2 to 5, etc. It can be used to get 1 or 2 equaling 1, 3, or 4 equaling 2, or in conjunction with any other dice to get linear or bell-shaped probability curves. For example, 2d4 equals 2 through 8, 3d4 equals 3 to 12, d4 plus d6 equals 2 through 10, d4 plus d20 as d10 equals 2 through 14. When rolled in conjunction with another die, the d4 can be used to determine linear number ranges twice that shown on the other die. Thus, d4 reading 1 or 2 means that whatever is read on the other die is the number shown. But if the d4 reads 3 or 4, add the highest number on the second die to the number shown. So, if d8 is the second die, 1 to 16 can be generated. If a d12 is used, 1 to 24 can be generated. If a d20 is used, either 1 through 20, assuming the use of a standard d20, which is numbered 0 to 9 twice, without coloring one set of faces to indicate those faces have 10 added to the number appearing, or 1 to 40, assuming that one set of faces is colored, can be gotten by adding 0 if 1 or 2 is rolled on the d4 and 10 or 20, depending on the die type. If a 3 or 4 is rolled, linear series above this are possible simply by varying the meaning of the d4 number. Gee, this is a lot of... I've never thought about dice like this. Like, not once in my entire life. This is crazy. 1 always means add 0, but 2 can be interpreted as add the value, highest number, of the second die. 3 can be twice value, and 4 can be thrice value. Thus, a d4 reading 4 in conjunction with a d8 linear curve, 1 to 32, would mean 24 plus d8, or 25 to 32. What applies to d4 has similar application with regards to d6, d8, d12, and d20. The d6 has 16 and 2/3% intervals, d8 has 12.5% intervals, and d20 can have 10% or 5% intervals. A d6 is useful for getting a random number from 1 to 3, 1 to 2 equals 1, 3 to 4 equals 2, 5 to 6 equals 3, while 1 to 5 can be easily read from a d20, 1 to 2 equals 1, 3 to 4 equals 2, 5 to 6 equals 3, 7 to 8 equals 4, 9 to 0 equals 5. The d20 is often used both as d10 and d20. The bell-shaped probability curves typically range from 2 to 20 to 5 to 50, i.e. 2, 3, 4, or 5d20 added together. Also common is the reading as above with one decimal place added to the result to get 20 to 200, 30 to 300, etc. In the latter case, a roll of 3 on one die and 0 reads as 10, totals 13 plus one place, or 130. Sweet hell, this is crazy. Non-platonic solid-shaped dice are available in some places. The most common of these is a 10-sided die numbered 0 to 9. As with the d20, this can be used for many purposes, even replacing the d20 if a second die is used in conjunction to get 5% interval curves, 1 to 20. Also, the die can give 0 to 9 linear curve random numbers as the d20 can. Other dice available at various forms of averaging dice. The most common of these has 6 faces which read 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. The median of the curve it generates is still 3.5, that of a normal d6, but the low and high numbers, 2 and 5, are only half as likely to appear as 3 or 4. There is a 33 and 1/3% chance for either of those two latter numbers to be rolled, so the probabilities of absolutely average rolls are far greater. Other such dice have zeros on them, several low numbers, and so on. These sorts of dice, along with the poker dice, put and take dice, or any other sort, can be added in order to give you more flexibility or changing probabilities in random selection or event interpretation. For example, the author has a d6 with the following faces: spade, club, club, diamond, diamond, heart. If during an encounter players meet a character whose reaction is uncertain, the card suit die is rolled in conjunction with 3d6. Black suit means dislike, with a spade equaling hate, while red equals like, the heart being great favor. The 3d6 gives a bell-shaped probability curve of 3 to 18, with 9 to 12 being the mean spread. Spade 18 means absolute and unchangeable hate, while heart 18 indicates the opposite. Clubs or diamonds can be altered, of course, by discourse, rewards, etc. Thus, clubs 12 could possibly be altered to clubs 3 by offering of a tribute or favor. Clubs 3 changed to diamonds 3 by a gift, etc. In closing, this discussion simply keep in mind that the dice are your tools. Learn to use them properly and they will serve you well. Okay, now have any of you ever dealt with dice in this manner? Like, if I'm going to be rolling percentiles, I just roll 2 10-sideds. I don't use 2 different types of dice in conjunction in order to create that percentile. If I need to do, 3d6, I just roll a 6-sided 3 times, or 3 6-sideds. I don't use a 4-sided and then, one 6-sided and come up with the result that way. Now, I imagine if we did, and we use that bell curve, our averages would be, more in the center and thus more successful, possibly. But that's a headache, right? That's a massive headache. I don't know why anyone would ever do that. Use of miniature figures with the game. The special figures cast for advanced Dungeons & Dragons add color to the play and make refereeing far easier. Each player might be required to furnish painted figures representing his or her playing character and all henchmen and or hirelings included in the game session. Such distinctively painted figures enables you to immediately recognize each individual involved. Figures can be placed so as to show their order of march, i.e., which characters are in the lead, which are in the middle, and which are bringing up the rear. Furthermore, players are more readily able to visualize their array and plan actions while seeing the reason for your restrictions on their actions. Monster figures are likewise most helpful, as many things become instantly apparent when a party is arrayed and their monster opponents placed. Furnishing such monsters is probably best undertaken as a joint effort, the whole group contributing towards the purchase of such figurines on a regular basis. Be very careful to purchase castings which are in scale. Out-of-scale monsters are virtually worthless in many cases. As a rule of thumb, HO scale is 25 millimeters equals 1 actual inch equals 6 feet in scale height or length or breadth. Figure bases are necessarily broad in order to assure that the figures will stand in the proper position and not constantly be falling over. Because of this, it is usually necessary to use a ground scale twice of the actual height for HO, and squares of about 1 actual inch per side are suggested. Each ground scale inch can then be used to equal 3 1/3 linear feet, so a 10-foot wide scale corridor is 3 actual inches in width and shown as 3 separate squares. This allows depiction of the typical array of 3 figures abreast, and also enables easily handling of such figures that when they are moved. While you may not find it convenient to actually use such figures and floor plans to handle routine dungeon movement, having sheets of squares for encounter area depictions will probably be quite helpful if you do so. Be certain to remember that the ground scale differs from figure scale, and when dealing with length, 2 man-sized figures per square is quite possible, as the space is actually 6 scale feet with respect to length. This is meaningful when attacking a snake, dragon, etc. If characters are able to attack the creature's body length with respect to basically bipedal erect opponents, scale will not be a factor. Details of preparation and painting of miniature figures for the game are not germane to this work. Your hobby supplier will have an assortment of small brushes and paints for such purposes, and you may inquire there as to be the best techniques of painting. Aids to playing advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Various products, such as modules, play aids, and miniature figurines, will be most helpful in establishing and maintaining an interesting and exciting campaign. There are so many such products available that it's not possible to detail each here, but some guidance can be given. Paper products range from record sheets for characters and special screens for the DM, which contain frequently consulted charts and tables on his or her side to complete dungeon or world scenarios. TSR provides a broad selection of such goods, some of which are listed at the back of this work. You can obtain a complete list by writing to TSR at the address shown on the cover and asking for a current catalog. The outlet of TSR products in Great Britain is TSR Hobbies UK Limited, the Mill, Rathmore Road, Cambridge, CB1 4AD, England. The only other source of approved and official AD&D material is Judges Guild, 1165 North University Avenue, Decatur, Illinois, 62526. Judges Guild publishes a large and continually expanding line of materials, and you should contact them for their current catalog. While there are many other works which appear to be useful in a campaign, only those bearing the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons logo and approval mark should be used. Miniature figures used to represent characters and monsters add color and life to the game. They also make the task of refereeing action, particularly combat, easier too. In combination with a gridded surface, such as the dungeon floor plans to be published by TSR in the near future, these miniatures will add a whole new dimension to your playing enjoyment. It is suggested that you urge your players to provide painted figures representing their characters, henchmen, and hirelings involved in play. The monsters can be furnished by you, possibly purchased through collection of small fees levied on each playing session. The official Advanced Dungeons & Dragons miniature figures will be released by Grenadier Models, POB 305 Springfield, Pennsylvania 19064, about November 1979. These figures are the only ones which comply in all respects to AD&D specifications and the AD&D Monster Manual. Contact Grenadier for an up-to-date listing of available figures. Other approved lines of fantasy figures approved for use with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons will be offered by select manufacturers. Always look for the name Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and the TSR approval mark before purchasing figures for your campaign. It is also very important to keep abreast of what is happening in the world of adventure gaming. You may do so by subscribing to such publications as The Dragon and White Dwarf, or you might find it convenient to purchase them from your favorite game supplier. For current frequency and costs, drop a card or letter to the address shown below and ask for the latest information. United States, TSR Periodicals, P.O. Box 110, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, 53147. Be certain to specify the names of the publications you're interested in. Again, a word of warning. Many products might purport to be satisfactory for use with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, but only those noted as official or authorized AD&D items should be accepted. Do not settle for substitutes or second-rate material in your campaign. Ask for approved AD&D products only. That was just a huge commercial. What the heck was that? Oh my goodness. A whole section, just a commercial. All right, next section here. Creating the player character. Generation of ability scores. As AD&D is an ongoing game of fantasy adventuring, it is important to allow participants to generate a viable character of the race and profession which he or she desires. While it is possible to generate some fairly playable characters by rolling 3d6, there is often an extended period of attempts at finding a suitable one due to quirks of the dice. Furthermore, these rather marginal characters tend to have short life expectancy, which tends to discourage new players, as does having to make do with some character of a race and or class which he or she really can't or won't identify with. Character generation, then, is a serious matter, and it is recommended that the following systems be used. 4 alternatives are offered for player characters. Method 1. All scores are recorded and arranged in the order the player desires. 46 are rolled, and the lowest die, or one of the lower, is discarded. Method 2. All scores are recorded and arranged as in Method 1. 3d6 are rolled 12 times, and the highest 6 scores are retained. Method 3. Scores rolled are according to each ability category, in order: Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, Dexterity, Constitution, Charisma. 3d6 are rolled 6 times for each ability, and the highest score in each category is retained for that category. Method 4. 3d6 are rolled sufficient times to generate the 6 ability scores in order for 12 characters. The player then selects the single set of scores which he or she finds most desirable, and these scores are noted in the character record sheet. Can I ask you guys, what method did you all use to generate your character ability scores? I'm trying to remember back in the day. I think I did method 2, where you just rolled 3d6 12 times and just chose the highest 6 scores. But I don't know, maybe method 1. Not that it matters. And also, like, going back to the aids in playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with the figures, I never used figures until I started playing 4th edition. No, that's not true. I started playing 3rd edition, and I started using figures there because it was very mechanic heavy. We would use, like, Hero Quest, the board game. Use those figures as our characters and stuff, because, you know, it also had, like, room furniture, like dungeon furniture and stuff, so we could just sort of arrange it on the fly. Heroes Quest was a great game for figures and stuff, because it gave you a ton. And then we just use skeletons as stand-ins for snakes or ogres or, you know, whatever. If you didn't have the right figure, you just used whatever you had. Before that, we just used our imagination, and if the player wasn't clear about where they stood in relation to the room or the dungeon or something, they just relied on the dungeon master to explain, you know? I don't know. That seems to be my personal favorite method, and if and when I start dungeon mastering a DragonLance campaign on this channel, I will definitely not be using, you know, one of those digital online map systems. It will all just be, you know, in the same way that the Black Dice Society does it, where it's just them talking about it and then, you know, rolling dice and stuff to see what happens. But I will not have visual, you know, maps and stuff. I think that can end up detracting and taking away from the game, especially when your DM is just, you know, messing with the system itself to get it to show what he wants it to show. Kind of a pain in the tuchus. All right, the next section. Non-player characters. Non-player characters. You should, of course, set the ability scores of those NPCs you will use as part of the milieu, particularly those of high level and power. Scores for high level NPCs must be high. How else could those figures have risen so high? Determine the ability scores of other non-playing characters as follows. General characters roll 3d6 for each ability as usual, but use average scoring by considering any 1 as a 3 and any 6 as a 4. Special characters, including henchmen, roll 3d6 as for general characters, but allow the full range 3 to 18, except in the ability or abilities which are germane to his or her profession, i.e. strength for fighters, etc. For all such abilities, use either one of the determination methods used for the player characters, or add +1 to each die for the 3 rolled with scores under 6. Can I ask you guys really quick about non-player characters, because I always just assigned what I thought would be a challenge. You know, I never rolled for a non-player character. That seems like a total waste of time. You know, you have in your head what this character is, or the role it's going to play, or, you know, the role it's going to take in the game session. Just apply the appropriate numbers. I don't understand why you would even bother rolling for non-playing characters. The effect of wishes on character ability scores. Hold on, I want to go back to this really quick. because I'm doing the section here. Okay, creating the player character as a section. All this is under that section. So the effect of wishes on character ability scores. It is quite unusual for players to use wishes or alter reality spells found on scrolls to increase their ability scores in desired area. Whatever the areas might be, it is strongly suggested that you place no restrictions upon such use of wishes. However, at some point, it must be made more difficult to go up in ability, or else many characters would eventually be running around with several 18s or even higher. Therefore, when an ability score reaches 16, then it should be ruled a wish will have the effect of increasing the ability by, say, only 1/10 of a point. Thus, by means of wishes and or alter reality spells, a charisma score of 16 can only be raised to 17 by use of 10 such wishes. The score going from 16 to 16.1 with the first wish, 16.2 with the second, and so on. This is not to say that magical books or devices cannot raise scores of 16 or better a full point. The prohibition is only on wishes. I'm trying to remember. I seem to remember multiple characters of my friends or myself in the past, like using items to enhance their stats and ending up with multiple 18s in some cases. I don't know. It's presented as it would be like a game-breaking event, right? If you had multiple 18s on one character. But the higher you get in levels, that seems like almost an inevitability, right? All right. Characteristics for player characters. Use of the NPC personality traits and characteristics for player characters is not recommended. The purpose of AD&D is to allow participants to create and develop interesting player characters who will adventure and interact with their surroundings. If personality traits are forced upon PCs, then participants will be doing little more than moving automatons around while you, the DM, tell them how their characters react to situations. It is therefore absolutely necessary for you to allow each player the right to develop his or her character as he or she chooses. This is not to say that some of the information used for development of NPCs cannot be used for PCs. If a player asks to have you make certain determinations for his or her character, you may do so if you believe that that player will be able to properly act the part as dictated by the dice rolls. Height and weight should be randomly determined for each PC, and the height and weight tables in the persona of non-player characters sections are useful in this regard. However, these tables do not actually give sufficient variations to upper limits of height and weight of humans, so you may find it necessary to allow the following height and weight variations for human player characters. Human male, height 2 to 20 inches, weight 10 to 200 pounds. Human female, height 2 to 12 inches, weight 10 to 120 pounds. Player character non-professional skills. When a player character selects a class, this profession is assumed to be that which the character has following previously, virtually to the exclusion of all other activities. Thus, the particular individual is at first level of ability. However, some minor knowledge of certain mundane skills might belong to the player character. Information and training from early years, or incidentally picked up when the individual was in apprenticeship learning his or her primary professional skills of clericism, fighting, etc. If the particular campaign is aimed at a level of play where secondary skills can be taken into account, then use the table below to assign them to a player characters, or even to henchmen if you so desire. Assigning a skill randomly or select according to the background of your campaign. To determine if a skill is known, roll the table, and if the dice indicate the results of 2 skills, then assign a second appropriate one. So let's look at the skills table really quick, which is pretty cool. You have your armor, bower, farmer, fisher, etc. We always used these. I don't think we ever actually used the skill in the game, but just as a bit of a background for the character. And, I don't know. Most of the times you just assume your character would know certain things about the world. So if you are a fighter or you wore armor, for example, in the same way that I own firearms, I understand how to take apart firearms and clean them. So if you're a fighter, you would understand how to take apart your, in some cases, weapons, maybe a crossbow or something, but also your armor in order to maintain it. I wouldn't rely on these secondary skills as a rule to say, well, you weren't an armor, so you wouldn't know how to do it yourself. No, you're using that equipment on a regular basis. You must know how to maintain it in some fashion. So, that's just how we rolled. When secondary skills are used, it's up to the DM to create and or adjudicate situations in which these skills are used or useful to the player character. As a general rule, having a skill will give the character the ability to determine the general worth and soundness of an item, the ability to find food, make small repairs, or actually construct crude items. For example, an individual with armor skill could tell the quality of normal armor, repair chain links, or perhaps fashion certain weapons. To determine the extent of knowledge in question, simply assume the role of one of these skills, one that you know a little something about, and determine what could be done with this knowledge. Use this as a scale to weigh the relative ability of characters with secondary skills. See also the campaign, social class, and rank in AD&D. Starting level of experience for player characters. As a general rule, the greatest thrill for any neophyte player will be the first adventure, when he or she doesn't have any real idea of what's happening, however powerful any encounter monster is, or what rewards will be gained from the adventure. This assumes survival, and you should gear your dungeon to accommodate first-level players. If your campaign has a mixture of experienced and inexperienced players, you should arrange for the two groups to adventure separately, possibly in separate dungeons at first. Allow the novice players to learn for themselves, and give experienced players tougher situations to face, for they already understand most of what is happening. Quite unlike true first-level adventures, of the would-be sort, were such persons actually to exist. If you have an existing campaign with the majority of the players being already above first level, it might be better to allow the few newcomers to begin at second level or even third or fourth, in order to give them a survival chance when the group sets off for some lower dungeon level. I do not personally favor granting unearned experience levels, except in extreme circumstances, such as just mentioned, for it tends to rob the new player of the real enjoyment he or she would normally feel upon actually gaining levels of experience by dint of cleverness, risk, and hard fighting. It has been called to my attention that new players will sometimes become bored and discouraged with the struggle to advance in levels of experience, for they do not have any actual comprehension of what it is like to be a powerful character of high level. In a well-planned and well-judged campaign, this is not too likely to happen, for the superior DM will have just enough treasure to whet the appetites of players, while keeping them lean and hungry still, and always offer that carrot just ahead. And one player's growing ennui can often be dissipated by rivalry, i.e., he or she fails to go on an adventure, and those who did play not only had an exciting time, but brought back a rich haul as well. Thus, in my opinion, a challenging campaign and careful refereeing should obviate the need for immediate bestowal of levels of experience to maintain interest in the game. However, whatever the circumstances, if some problem such as this exists, it has been further suggested that allowing relatively new players to participate in a modular campaign game, assuring new players of characters of higher level, would often whet their appetites for continued play at lower level, for they can then grasp what it will be like should they actually succeed in attaining proficiency on their own, by working up to the original characters and gaining high levels of experience. This reasoning seems sound, and providing there is a separation of the two campaigns, and though one isn't begun until new players have had some number of expeditions as first-level characters, it is not destructive to the game as a whole. Okay, that is the end of that creating the player character section. We are about at 1 hour. All right, let me set this next one up. All right, well, you can't see it, but it says character age, aging, disease, and death. I'm totally reading that wrong. Let me get some coffee in me before I go on. There you go. Character age. At the onset of each and every character's creation, it is necessary that you establish his or her age. For player characters and henchmen, you must use the appropriate table. You may do the same for other characters, or you may have assign age as you see fit in light of the milieu you have developed. There are 2 tables, one for non-human, the demi-humans, part humans and the like, and one for humans. So let's take a look at this table here. So we've got non-human characters and how to determine their ages based on their class, which I also think is kind of interesting. Okay. And then the humans' age tables. Bards begin at the age of the class in which they first begin. A little side note there. All right. Once character age is established, you must keep track of it from game year to game year. CF time in the campaign. To normal game time years must be added any of the various unnatural causes of shortening life, i.e. aging. These effectively add years to the character's age. The effects of aging are given in the next section. The maximum age of any character is likewise explained. I gotta be honest, I don't remember ever keeping track of age other than initially on character creation. Because, like, when you're gaming, like, you know, I don't ever recall being in a dungeon for years, you know. From that point on, instead of character age, it's always level that we, you know, focused on. Although I do recall, you know, bringing back an old character, you know, as an old man, just, you know, as a sort of mentor to younger characters, but it wasn't to track the age or something. I just figured, you know, if he's 16th level, he's got to be an old man because it takes a long time to get there. Anyway, aging. In order to establish the overall effects of age, it is necessary to establish a number of standard age brackets for each race of characters. When age category is established, modify ability scores accordingly, making each change progressively from young adulthood, all additions and subtractions being cumulative. The only ability which may exceed 18 due to age effects, unless age restricts this, is wisdom. Most adjustments are in whole numbers, so that 18 strength drops to 17, even if it is from 1800, as exceptional strength is not considered. So let's take a look at this right here. And you can see the effects of aging on the individual races and age groups of the individuals, and what you would have to do to adjust their abilities appropriately. You know, and if you're old, you add 1 point of wisdom. That makes perfect sense. Subtracting strength makes perfect sense. And so they try to make it as logical as possible. But again, it is a fantasy game, so let's not get crazy. It's important to remember that adjustments cannot exceed racial maximums, nor can they be used if they cause abilities to exceed stated maximums. Likewise, any adjustments cannot lower any ability below racial or class minimums. Unnatural aging. Certain creatures will cause unnatural aging, and in addition, various magical factors can do so. The following magical diseases, the following magic causes loss of lifespan, aging the practitioner as indicated. See also disease for other unnatural aging causes. Longevity potions and possibly other magical means will offset such aging to some extent. So let's try to take a look at this, though my characters, or my avatar there is in the way. Magical aging causes. Alter reality ages you 3 years? I didn't know that. Limited wish ages you a year? I don't think I've ever consulted this table once. Wow. Under a haste spell, you age a year? Jeez. All right. Not a big deal for those demi-humans, but us humans. Note, reading one of the above spells from a scroll, or using the power from a ring or other device, does not cause unnatural aging, but placing such a spell upon the scroll in the first place will do so. Interesting. So casting the spell will do it, making a scroll of the spell will do it, but actually reading it will not. Okay. CF, death due to age, subsection of death. Disease. As with poisons, this system does not attempt a specific treatment of a subject which is beyond the scope and purposes. What is done, however, is to give general categories of diseases and maladies and their game effects, as well as the chance to contract an ailment according to their surroundings. Naturally, you will have no need for any random determination of a disease, as the affliction will be specified, but even then you will find that the random determinants for occurrence and severity might be helpful. Contraction of a disease. Each game month, you may wish to check each character to determine whether or not he or she has contracted a disease or disorder. Check each week if conditions are particularly favorable. Why would you randomly contract a disease every month? That's weird. I've never done that. Have you guys ever done that? Like, the only time I ever dealt with diseases or poisons or anything like that is when a creature or an environment, like a trap or something, causes it, you know? Not just like randomly each month. Oh, well, you just got a disease. Sorry. That's crazy. All right, so what are they saying here? Check each week if conditions are particularly favorable, very hot weather or hot, moist weather, filthy, crowded conditions in warm weather. Pardon. Contraction of a parasitic infestation. Each game month, check for each character to determine if he or she has become infested with some sort of parasite. Check each week if conditions are particularly favorable. Filthy conditions in warm temperature, hot, moist weather. Check each and every time the character is exposed to a carrier of parasites. Carriers include humans, animals, dust, earth, manure, raw or undercooked meat, swamp water, etc. Checks are made by using the appropriate tables shown hereafter. All right, am I the only one that did not do this? This is a lot. That's crazy. Check this out. So chance of contracting a disease, base chance is 2%, which I dig. You know, it makes sense. And let's be honest, these are set in fantasy worlds. They're very much, you know, like medieval Earth. So there's no soaps, there's no regular baths, there's no disinfectants, there's no inoculations. It makes sense. You know, you didn't purify water. That's why most people drank beer, and, well, wine was much less, and distilled spirits weren't really a big thing back then. But beer, you just fermented, or, you know, meat or something, you fermented whatever you're going to drink because it killed the bacteria, and it allowed you to drink the water that was used to make, you know, because, of course, they didn't understand, but, you know, you were boiling it in most cases in order to create the beer. So these are different modifiers with which you can also increase or decrease your chances of contracting a disease or a parasite. It's just so weird to me. I never use this on like the regular. So procedure, adjust base chance of disease being contracted by applying modifiers. When the final percentage chance to contract a disease is found, roll for each character concerned. If disease is indicated, go to the disease table below to determine what sort is contracted. Chance of parasitic infestation, and then it has those percentages there as well. Procedure, ask for disease and check parasitic table. Wow. So here we go. Here are the diseases that you could contract. Oy vey. And it shows you the severity of the contraction. So today we would have COVID-19 somewhere in here. That's not a disease, it's a virus, I know. But, and then your parasitic infestation table right here. God, that sucks. All right, let's get into some diseases. Occurrence determines whether the disease is a single acute attack or whether the disease will recur periodically once contracted, chronic. Chronic maladies will affect the character periodically, and if they occur at the same time as any other malady, disease, disorder, or parasitic infestation, the severity of both will be increased. Thus, if two chronic maladies are contracted, the character is not likely to survive another disease attack. So I'm thinking about how to apply this in terms of gaming, and I'm, you know, brought right back to Raceland Majir and how he was always sickly and, you know, since he lived. Like, he died, or he almost died in, you know, infancy, but his sister Kitiara kept him alive. So I wonder if we would, you know, as far as game mechanics, if he had a parasitic or a disease infection, or if you just role played it. Because honestly, the way I've always done it is just role played it. I never had like literal, you're gonna be suffering X amount of damage, or you're gonna be down for X amount of days because of this disease or something. And in most cases, you have cure disease, so a spell or someone that you could pay to do that for you. Unless, of course, you're in Dragonlance in the age of despair, then you're screwed. So occurrence determines whether the disease is a single acute attack or whether the disease will recur periodically once contracted. Chronic. I already said that, dang it. Sorry, guys. Severity refers to the seriousness of the disease, disorder, or parasitic infestation and determines the period of disability, recovery time, or length of illness, which terminates in the character's demise and the effects of the malady. Mild. During the period of infection, the character is unable to perform strenuous activities and must rest. Some treatment must be determined by the DM to allow a shortening of the period of illness. A normal period is 1 to 3 weeks. Severe. A severe malady will lower the character's hit points to 50% of the normal and make him or her totally disabled for 1 to 2 weeks, plus a further 1 to 2 weeks of time during which the malady is in the mild state as the character recovers. Terminal. The malady will cause death or loss of the body part or function in 1 to 12 days. Longer periods are stated hereafter in the discussion of the various maladies. Blood, et al., afflictions will cause a loss of 1 point each of strength and constitution per week until totally cured. Thus, chronic problems here will slowly wear the character away. Terminal cases will take 1 to 12 weeks. Bone afflictions are much the same as blood problems, and chronic cases or terminal afflictions can be treated in the same way. Brain, et al., problems will cause a loss of 1 point of each intelligence and dexterity per occurrence until totally cured, so chronic maladies will eventually be fatal. Terminal affliction takes only 1 to 12 hours for death to occur. Cardiovascular renal afflictions should be treated in the same manner as blood problems, except that terminal cases last only 1 to 12 days. Connective tissue diseases, such as leprosy, permanently remove 1 point each of strength, dexterity, constitution, and charisma for each month of affliction. Thus, only an acute mild attack will not cause such loss. Terminal cases will last until constitution is at 0, i.e., treat them as chronic severe cases. You know what? The more I think about this, if characters lived in towns like Solace or Palanthus, those are very popular and populated locations, like Haven. I would not have them roll on a monthly basis or I would not roll on their behalf on a monthly basis to see if they contracted a disease. However, if they did, if they were like hanging around Pax Tharkaz with, or Zaxaroth with a bunch of gully dwarves, then yeah, I would definitely run the disease and stuff. Like that makes perfect game sense to do that. Or in, the first module for the Dragonlance DL1, yeah, you're going to be going right through Zaxaroth. You're going to be hanging out with gully dwarves. You're probably going to come back with a parasite or a disease for sure. Ear afflictions, which are terminal, result in hearing loss in one ear. Eye afflictions, which are terminal, result in blindness in one or both eyes, 50% chance for either case. Gastrointestinal problems of chronic nature cause the loss of 1 point each of strength and constitution per occurrence until cured, several attacks causing such loss permanently. Terminal cases require 1 to 12 weeks for fatality. Generative organ disorders cause no particular problems except spread of infection. Terminal cases take 1 to 12 months. Joint disorders of a chronic nature cause the loss of 1 point of dexterity, with each severe attack causing such loss on a permanent basis. Mucous membrane problems of chronic nature cause the loss of 1 point of constitution, each severe attack causing such loss permanently. Muscle disorders of chronic nature cause the loss of 1 point each of strength and dexterity, severe attacks having a 25% chance of causing such a loss permanently. Terminal cases take 1 to 12 months. Nose-throat afflictions of chronic nature have a 10% chance of causing a 1 point constitution loss each time a severe attack occurs. Respiratory disorder of chronic severe nature are 10% likely to cause the loss of 1 point of each strength and constitution, checked separately for each. Terminal cases take from 1 to 12 months until fatality occurs. Skin afflictions of severe nature are 10% likely to cause permanent loss of 1 point of charisma. Chronic mild attacks are also 10% likely to cause such loss, while chronic severe attacks will be 25% likely to cause such loss. Terminal cases will take 1 to 12 weeks for fatality. Urinary system disorders of chronic severe nature are 20% likely to cause a loss of 1 point each of dexterity and constitution per occurrence. Terminal case will take 1 to 12 weeks. And then we have a little table here of adjustments to occurrence and severity die rolls based on your existing either stat scores or diseases. Okay. Note, die score of 0 or less on either roll indicates the character does not contract the disease. Not to be used for parasitic infestation determination. Okay, good times. Diseases. And another hot topic, death. The character faces death in many forms. The most common, death due to combat, is no great matter in most cases, for the character can often be brought back by means of a cleric spell or an alter reality or wish. Of course, recovery of damage sustained might be a problem, but that is not insurmountable. Death due to age. This is a serious matter, for unless the lifespan can otherwise be prolonged, the character brought back from such death faces the prospect of soon dying again. Beyond the maximum age determined for the character in question, no form of magic which does not prolong lifespan will work. Thus, some characters may become liches. Of course, multiple potions of longevity, wishes, and possibly magical devices will allow a greater extended lifespan, but once a character dies due to old, venerable age, then it is all over. If you make this clear, many participants will see the continuity of the family line as a way to achieve a sort of immortality. Determination of maximum age. Unless the character dies of some other cause, he or she will live to old age. Use the following table to find the exact age at which a character will die of natural causes. So we look here at our maximum character age table. Use the die to determine the addition or subtraction according to the span of years in the category. And then treat a roll of 0 as naught rather than as 10. So in effect, a random number between 0 and 9 is being generated. And then treat a die result of 20 as naught. So numbers between 0 and 19 are being generated. Examples of maximum age determination. The die rolled indicates the dwarf character will live to old age, lowest figure, plus D8. As the span considered is 100 years, D8 stands for decades, so the character will live for 251 years plus 10 to 80 years, plus 0 to 9 years. The same dwarf considered above is to live to old age, highest figure, minus 4. The variable is minus 10 to minus 40 years, minus 0 to 9 years. The dice rolled for the half-orc character indicates that he will live to venerable age, highest figure, plus d20. As the span considered is under 100 years, the character will live for 80 years, plus 0 to 19 years, or 80 to 99 years. As a result of 20 equals 0 years added to the maximum venerable age shown for the character race. The dice show that a high elf character will live to venerable age, lowest figure, plus d6, as the span of years for this character race is 400 years. The character will live to be 1,201 plus 20 to 120 years, plus 0 to 19 years, or to an age of 1,221 to 1,340 years. Assume that the d6 shows 4, so 80 years are added. 4 times 20 equals 80. To bring lifespan to 1,281, which is 1,201 plus 80, and then d20 is rolled and a 0 comes up, so total lifespan is 1,281 years. 1,201 plus 80 plus 0 equals 1,281. Death due to disease or disorder or parasitic infestation. Any character brought back from such a state will suffer the ravages of the disease or infestation, permanent losses in abilities, for example, until magically countered. Furthermore, such a character will be 90% likely to still be suffering from the cause of death unless a curative is used. Even then, the character will have to spend time recovering as if from a severe illness. Ability losses which have been permanently sustained will not be corrected by a curative of any sort, including a cure disease spell. Magical corrections, wishes, alter reality spells, and magical devices will certainly correct these deficiencies. All right, that is the end of that section, and that was a big one. And why does this thing stop randomly? All right, character abilities is the next section. And I've got about a half an hour in me here. It's just a rainy day here, and so I can't really work in the yard, which is what I'd normally be doing right now. And I was supposed to go hiking, but again, downpour, and my friend didn't want to go with me, so I'm just sort of here hanging out with you. I appreciate you. All right, I'm done with my coffee yet. Character abilities. Explanation of abilities. Strength. The strength characteristic of a human or humanoid of any type, and of player characters in particular, is more than a simple evaluation of the musculature of the body. Strength is a composite rating of physical power, endurance, and stamina. A rating of 3, for example, indicates that the creature in question has little of each of the 3 categories. A score of 10 or thereabouts shows that the creature has the norm for a human adult male, based on an assumed medieval standard where the typical individual was in good shape due to the necessity of hard labor. While a score of 18 means that the creature has a composite rating for far above average in all respects. By way of comparison, kobolds will have an average strength rating of 9, goblins 10, orcs 12, hobgoblins 15, gnolls 16, bugbears 17, ogres 18, and trolls a strength rating of 18+. Gnomes have an average strength rating of 10, dwarves 14, elves 12, halflings 8, and giants 19 and up. Exceptional strength. Assume further that a strength of 18 indicates that the creature can lift equal to its own body weight, or 180 pounds, whichever is the greater above its head. This rating is modified by a restriction that no creature of human or humanoid nature can lift more than twice its own body weight above its head. A human with an 18 strength and an average percentile dice roll is able to lift 1 additional pound for every percentage point up to and including 50%. 4 pounds for every percentage point from 51% to 90%, and 8 pounds for each percentage point from 91% to 100%. Intelligence. The intelligence rating roughly corresponds to our modern IQ scores. However, it assumes mnemonic reasoning and learning ability skills in additional areas outside the written word. Wisdom. For game purposes, wisdom ability subsumes the categories of willpower, judgment, wile, enlightenment, and intuitiveness. An example of the use of wisdom can be given by noting that while the intelligent character will know that smoking is harmful to him, he may well lack the wisdom to stop. This writer may well fall into this category. Dexterity. The dexterity rating includes the following physical characteristics: hand-eye coordination, agility, reflex speed, precision, balance, and actual speed of movement in running. It would not be unreasonable to claim that a person with a low dexterity might well be quite agile, but have low reflex speed, poor precision, bad balance, and be slow of foot, but slippery in the grasp. Constitution. This character ability rating is a general heading under which falls the character's physique, health, resistance, and fitness. An individual who catches cold if exposed to a slight draft has a constitution of 5 or less in all probability. Rasputin had an 18 constitution. Is it normal that everyone just knows who Rasputin is? Like, I know because I'm obsessed with the occult when I was a little kid, and I read all sorts of, crazy books. So I understand Rasputin, the historical figure, and the purported mystical and magical nature applied to him. But does the average person who's just getting into this know? I don't know. And that's not to say that I'm not average. I mean, just, does everyone know history? And how much history does everyone know? Charisma. Many persons have the sad misconception that charisma is merely physical attractiveness. This error is obvious to any person who considers the subject with perceptiveness. Charisma is a combination of physical appearance, persuasiveness, and personal magnetism. True charisma becomes evident when others consider such historic examples of Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Adolf Hitler. Obviously, these individuals do not have an 18 score on physical beauty, so it is quite possible to assume that scores over 18 are possible for any one of the named historical personalities who have had a higher charisma score. There can be no question that these individuals were 18s. If they would have had great attractiveness as well as commanding personal magnetism and superb persuasiveness. I'm getting tongue-tied. My goodness. All right, that's the end of that section, so let's go to this one. Character races. Player character racial tendencies. As a general rule, the player will develop the personalities and other characteristics of his or her persona in the campaign, and little or no DM interference is necessary in this regard. To find the general height and weight of a PC, use the tables given for development of NPCs. Alignment must certainly affect, if not dictate, much of the actual behavior of each PC, and so it will affect characteristics as well. In this regard, it is important for you to see that the particular characteristics of each persona meet with the overall character and alignment of the individual adventure concerned. Racial characteristics can also be a factor. Consider the following guidelines. Dwarves tend to be dour and taciturn. They're given to hard work and care little for most humor. They are strong and brave, but they also enjoy beer, ale, mead, and even stronger drink. Their chief love, however, is precious metal, particularly gold. They also enjoy gems, of course, particularly those of opaque nature, except pearls, which they do not like, and diamonds. They like the earth and dislike the sea, considering that their women tend to be bearded too. It is not surprising that some dwarves are somewhat forward in their behavior towards females not so adorned. If dwarves are a trifle suspicious and avaricious, they generally make up for such faults by their courage and tenacity. Elves. Elves are often considered flighty or frivolous, and this is the case when they do not believe a matter to be of import. They concern themselves with the natural beauty around them, dancing and frolicking, playing and singing unless necessity dictates otherwise. Because elves love nature, they are not fond of ships or mines, but of growing things and the lands under the sky. They do not make friends easily, but friend or enemy is never forgotten. Their humor is clever, as are their songs and poetry. Elves are brave, but never foolhardy. They feast, but eat sparingly, drink mead and wine, but seldom become drunk from excess. While they find well-wrought jewelry a pleasure to behold, they are not overly interested in money or gain. Magic fascinates elves, however, and if they have a weakness, it lies in this desire. If elves tend towards haughtiness and arrogance at times, they are not inclined to regard their friends and associates as anything other than equals. Gnomes are most lively and full of humor, often on the black side of practical jokes. They enjoy eating and can drink as much as dwarves do. They are sly and furtive with those they do not know or trust, and even somewhat reserved with most bigger folk, such as elves and humans. Gnomes love all sorts of precious stones, and they are masters of gem polishing and cutting. In most other respects, they are not unlike dwarves, but they enjoy the open world of growing things almost as much as their mines and burrows. Of course, this is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons gnomes, not Dragonlance gnomes, so they do have dramatic differences. Half-elves are usually much like their elven parent in characteristics, although to somewhat lesser extent than a pure elf. Halflings are quite similar to gnomes, although they eat more and drink less. They are also prone to favor natural beauty in the outdoors more than they do their burrows. They are not forward, and they are observant and conversational if in friendly company. Because they are more open and outgoing than either dwarves or elves, they get along with most other races far better than the former two do. Halflings see wealth as a means of gaining comforts only, for they love creature comforts. If they are not overly brave or ambitious, they are generally honest and hard-working when there is need. Halflings love stories and good jokes, and are perhaps a trifle bearing at times. half-orcs are boars. They are rude, crude, crass, and generally obnoxious. Because most are cowardly, they tend to be bullies and cruel to the weak, but they will quickly knuckle under to the stronger. This does not mean that all half-orcs are horrid, only most of them. It neither means that they are necessarily stupid nor incapable. They will always seek to gain the upper hand and dominate those around them so as to be able to exercise their natural tendencies. Half-orcs are greedy too. They can, of course, favor their human parent more than their orcish one. That's the end of that section. Okay. Let me update this here. Classes. Character classes. Followers for upper level player characters. Your players know that upon reaching certain levels and doing certain things, such as building a stronghold, they will be entitled to attract a body of followers. These followers might be fanatically loyal servants of the same deity or deities in the case of clerics, stalwart admirers of fighters, or whatever. Your players will eventually turn to you for information on who or what they gain. And when the time actually comes that they have reached the level and done the right things, you'll be able to quickly inform each and every one concerned of what fate has decreed by way of followers. So let's look at these tables together. So clerics, it shows what they get. They're all 0-level men-at-arms. It's interesting. Select type or types randomly or assign whichever you desire. Type of polearm here. And fighters, roll once for each leader type, once for troop and followers. All are 0-level men-at-arms. This is another aspect of the game I never did. I never worried about followers. Like, not once. So leader and troops here. And then rangers, roll 2d12 to find the number of followers or creatures attracted to service. When the number is generated, adjust the following percentile die rolls as follows. And you can see here. If any addition or subtraction falls within a category no longer permissible, or if a subtraction results in a score under 0-1, roll again. When the number of rolls the ranger player character is entitled to is discovered and the adjustment necessary noted, determine the follower's creatures using the tables below. All scores over 70 are special, and the ranger is able to attract one follower or creature group only from each category as noted. Add all creatures of any sort to find total followers, demi-humans included. Whoa. All right, let's check this out. So rangers can get a bunch of different types of followers. Here's your human table, your demi-human table. Animals. Dude, I want a lynx. That'd be awesome. Mount. They can get a Pegasus mount? That's amazing. 3 centaurs? That's crazy. That's awesome. Look at that, a copper dragon. A ranger can have a dragon or a storm giant. That's insane. All right, thieves. Roll 46 to determine the number of lesser thieves which the character will attract. Determine race and level of each thereafter, modifying the D% roll for a level as follows. So we have our modifier here, and then the races of the thief, the levels of the thief, and then multi-class thief follower table. Assassins. Upon attaining Guildmaster, Guildmistress status, roll 7d4 to determine the number of lower-level assassins in the local guild. You may adjust the result according to the population of the area if you deem it necessary. After determining this number, find the race and level below, and then find which will say 75% will desert the guild as noted in the player's handbook. All new assassins coming to fill the ranks will be first level, but race must be determined on the Race of Assassin table. And we can see that right here. And level. Interesting. Oh, we're not done. Sorry about that. We have multi-class assassins table right here. Okay. Grandfather or grandmother of assassins, the leader of all assassins, a normal title at times, will always have 28 followers of 2nd through 8th level as follows. 1 8th level, 2 7th level, 3 6th level, 4 5th level, 5 4th level, 6 3rd level, and 7 2nd level. It equals 28. In addition, there will be from 4 to 16 first level followers, die for each race using the table above. It is recommended that you develop henchmen for the grandfather or grandmother after discovering the abilities of his or her followers. Mercenary fighters and men-at-arms should suit the circumstances, but in general they should be very well armed and equipped and include cavalry, infantry, and missile-armed troops as well. Naturally, should an NPC grandfather or grandmother of assassins be displaced by a player character, followers will be 75% likely to leave, as usual, but the new leader will eventually attract a following of up to 44, 28 plus 4 to 16 assassins, the newcomers being found as if they were attracted to a new guildmaster of assassins, i.e. first level newcomers. Unless the followers are a body, they will not come at the same time. After the conditions for obtaining such a following have been met, generate a random number from 1 to 30, d10 using d6 to determine tenses, 1 to 2 equals no addition, 3 to 4 add 10, 5 to 6 add 20 to the score of the d10. The result is the day after completion of all requirements on which the first followers will appear. In some cases, all of those coming. Thereafter, additional followers due to the character will arrive at intervals of 1 to 8 days until all have arrived. If there is no one available to receive them, they will wait from 1 to 4 days and they depart forever. In the latter case, the character has lost that follower forever. It is possible to allow some henchman or servant to care for followers if the character designates such duty. The Paladin's Warhorse. When the Paladin reaches 4th level or higher, he or she will eventually call for a warhorse, as detailed in the player's handbook. It will magically appear, but not in actual physical form. The Paladin will magically see his or her faithful destrier in whatever locale it is currently in, and if it is thereafter up to the Paladin to journey to the place and gain the steed. As a rule of thumb, this journey will not be beyond 7 days' ride, and gaining the mount will not be an impossible task. The creature might be wild and necessitate capturing, or it might be guarded by an evil fighter of the same level as the Paladin, and the latter will then have to overcome the former in mortal combat in order to win the warhorse. In short, the gaining of the destrier is a task of some small difficulty which will take a number of days, possibly 2 or more weeks, and will certainly test the mettle of the Paladin. Once captured or won, the warhorse knows its role in relationship to the Paladin and will faithfully serve thereafter for 10 years. Thereafter, the Paladin must seek another mount, as the former one will be too old to be useful. The intelligence of a Paladin's warhorse is 5 to 7 points. The number of hit points per hit die of the steed will never be fewer than 50% of the level of the Paladin, i.e. a 4th level Paladin means the warhorse he or she gains will have at least 2 hit points per hit die, excluding the additional bonus of +5, while at 16th level, Paladin's special steed will have maximum hit points 8 per die. Of 5 times 8 equals 40 plus 5 additional hit points equals 45 total hit points for 5 plus 5 hit dice. Jeez. If the character loses Paladinhood for any reason, there will be an immutable enmity between character and mount, and the former will not be able to ride the latter, while the steed will escape at first opportunity. Spying. In general, most spies will be hired assassins, although it is likely that some regular spies will be employed by player characters from time to time. Most spying missions will fall into the following categories. Simple. Missions which require information regarding the general state of defenses and number of troops or preparations for some activity. Simple missions require only the observations of the spy acting in a non-critical role, i.e., just being around as one of many individuals in the place. Difficult. Missions of this category require the spy to gain some secret information, such as plans, documents, maps, etc. Difficult missions require the spy to gain access to something or gain the confidence of someone, and so the spy must actively pursue his or her role in an outstanding manner. Extraordinary. Missions of long, complex, and hazardous nature, which require insinuation of the spy into an organization or operation, and the relay of detailed information on a continual basis for the spy. Extraordinary missions require long-term association of the spy with the spied upon and the continuing acquisition of general and specific information of highly detailed and secret nature. In simple missions, there is little risk of discovery, while risks become more likely in difficult missions and very great in extraordinary missions. Where a player character is involved, spying missions are a matter of interaction according to the dictates of the player character involved, through the DM according to the situation as known by him or her and the reactions of the spied upon. In the case of a non-player character undertaking a spy mission, a success table is used. Here's that success table. So the level of the spy or assassin, the chance of success according to category, and here we go. Time required to accomplish mission, we should probably note that as well. Simple is 1 to 8, difficult is 5 to 40, and extraordinary as required. The length of time necessary to travel to the region in which the spying activity is to take place must be determined by the referee according to circumstances. Once in the necessary locale, the spy will then take a variable period of time to accomplish the mission or fail, according to the degree of difficulty of the task. Extraordinary missions must be determined by the circumstances of the case. For example, a spy sent to become a member of a secret society must take a month to discover the recruiting requirements of the society, and then spend one or more months making himself or herself eligible for recruitment, and then become insinuated in the group. Thereafter, he or she would gain simple or difficult information according to the time requirements shown, and special information could be gained only as the individual gained more and more status within the organization through continued membership and seemingly outstanding contribution. Whoa. Chance of discovery. There always exists a chance of discovery, no matter how simple the mission. The base chance to be discovered is a cumulative 1% per day of time spent spying, subject to a maximum of 10% minus the level of the spy. Even if the latter brings chance of discovery to a negative percentage, there is always a 1% chance. Modifiers are dependent upon the precautions against spying taken by the spied upon. And there's a tiny little table here for that right here. No precautions is 1% per week. Minimal is 1% to 10% per week. Moderate is modified twice per week. Strong is double modified chance twice per week. Minimal precautions represent occasional checks on individuals and their activities and some watch on important information. Moderate precautions are simply more frequently carried out, minimal precautions, and more careful questioning of anyone behaving in such a suspicious manner. Strong precautions include many security checks as individuals and information, as well as counter spies operating to discover any such activity. If a spy actually becomes a leader in a group, the chance for being detected then drops to that of the category of no precautions, as the individual is regarded as being above suspicion, i.e., only certain jealous or ferret-like operations will still check on the individual. Chance of discovery will increase tenfold if a spy is caught and another spy is still attempting to operate during the period of 20 to 50 days thereafter. To find if a spy is discovered, roll percentile dice according to the time period stated. If the mission takes only a fraction of the time stated, roll a third percentile die for tenths of percent. Thus, 1% per week equals 0.14% chance per day. So a roll of 99.9% indicates discovery on a one-day mission. If a spy is discovered, go to the spy failure table below. Wow. Spy failure. If after spending the requisite time the spy rolls and is not successful, various possibilities exist. The results are determined on the table below. Note that this table is also used for spy discovery with appropriate modifiers. And here's this table here. 1 to 35 further attempts to gain successful are possible, but time to accomplish the mission must be determined. 36 to 60 is any further spying attempts will be 90% likely to result in failure, discovery, and imprisonment. 61 to 80, spy caught in suspicious act, imprisoned, and nothing further is heard. Asterisk is if counter spies are employed, they will give the spy false information and follow him or her to find where he or she came from and who sent him or her to spy in the first place. 81 to 95, spy is caught with a positive proof of spying activity and is tortured. 1 to 2 dead, 3 to 4 revealed everything, 5 to 6 turncoat. 96 to 100, spy is killed or turns coat if counter spies are present. And then the modifiers here is difficult mission, 10%, extraordinary mission, minus 5%, discovered, plus 25%. Fanatical spies. Spies who are absolutely dedicated to their master or a cause cannot be assassins normally hired to spy, but such can exist. These spies will never become double agents. On any die total over 60, they simply kill themselves. CF, expert hirelings for the cost of non-playing character spies. Wow. I think I'm going to stop there because I'm already slurring my words and stuff just after reading for so long. The next section is thief abilities, and we will pick that up next time. I don't know when that next time will be, but thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. That is it for this episode of Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. What do you think about diseases and spying in general? Let me know in the comments, or you can always email me at info@dragonlance-saga.com. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link, all of which are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.